Resuming the adjourned debate on the motion for an address in reply to the speech from the throne, I recognize the Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It is a great honor to rise and speak as the Leader of the Opposition to the speech from the throne. Je m'en voudrais.
I would be remiss if I did not take the time to join the government in saluting and congratulating New Brunswickers for their achievements over the past year. And I join the government in offering my condolences to those we have lost over the past year. As you know, the speech from the throne sets out the government's priorities for the coming year. Our role as the official opposition is to hold the government accountable for its promises, its progress to date in fulfilling its mandate, and its overall management of public affairs.
We get to speak to a broader range of topics, such as our families, our ridings, and so on. In politics, as much as we as elected officials try to bring or deliver certainty, reliability, desired outcomes, politics is often, by its nature, a very uncertain thing for the people tasked with delivering said outcomes. As elected members, we are keenly aware that the privilege and honor that we have in occupying these seats is never guaranteed. That is why we take these opportunities to speak to our family lives and to the pride we have in our communities, because they form the very base as to why we put our names on the ballot in the first place. I have had the honor to speak to the importance of family, of their sacrifices that allow us to do this very important and difficult job on behalf of people, of our choices that cause us to be here, willing to do what is necessary to discharge our duties, and in so doing, miss many, many special moments away from our families. And so, in perhaps too brief a way to truly do it justice, I would like to thank and recognize my family. To my wife, Mary, who is my rock and my strength, whose spirit and joy make me believe in the goodness of the world. Thank you for always believing in me.
Right.
We have experienced much in our now 29 years of marriage. I know this was certainly not part of the plan, but you have given everything of yourself to me and our family so that I can give everything I can to the service of people. Thank you. I love you. I could not do it without you. To my children who have had to grow up quickly in a life that sometimes brings unwelcome challenges due to simply being the children of a public figure, thank you for your love, patience, and understanding. I am so proud of your strength and resilience. I love you all, and I am so excited to see what happens with the next chapters of your lives and what that will bring for you. To my sisters who have always been there for their little brother, my extended family, friends, supporters who have also all been part of this journey, I continue to walk this path because of your support. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. To the voters of St. John East who have given me their confidence over these many years, I have kept faith with you. Through every challenge that has come my way, either personally or professionally, I have worked each and every day to be worthy of that trust. I will continue to advocate ceaselessly on your behalf. Thank you.
This brings me to the heart of my speech, defending all the residents of this province. We recently had a by-election in Miramichi West. I'm very proud to be sitting here today with the new representative for that district. I consider him a true team player, someone who puts the needs of others before his own. That is what the people in his riding need, and that is what New Brunswick needs. I think he is an excellent addition to our team.
Mais s'il occupe aujourd'hui ce siège, c'est en grande partie grâce aux mesures prises par le gouvernement actuel. Tout au long de la campagne, nous avons clairement entendu dire que les régions rurales de Nouveau-Brunswick étaient laissées pour compte, que leurs besoins en matière de soins de santé, d'éducation, de soins aux personnes âgées, d'accessibilité financière et de gouvernance locale ont tous été négligés par le gouvernement libéral. Ce ne sont pas mes paroles, mais le résultat de conversations directes que nous avons eues lors de nos visites porte-à-porte. Tout comme lorsque j'ai remporté mon élection partielle, lorsque nous avons ravi un siège au gouvernement libéral, c'est grâce à ce gouvernement que nous avons conservé un siège, en partie grâce aux actions de ce gouvernement libéral. Les habitants de Miramichi-Ouest savaient bien ce qui était le mieux pour eux en termes de représentation.
Okay, and the rest of the province is learning the same thing.
And it is the failures of this government that are becoming a clear pattern of behavior for the people of this province. Let me be clear. One can take no joy in the failures of government, because when government fails, people suffer. It is truly said that a good idea is often a good idea, regardless of where it came from. It is also said a good idea is as only valuable as its execution. And this is where the Holt government has failed New Brunswickers. When this government presented people with their ideas, they voted based on the promise that they would deliver. There is no joy to be had in the litany of promises that this government has failed to and will continue to fail to deliver. That they broke them and continue to break them is of no surprise to me or anyone who voted for us. But they have let down the people who did believe them, people who believed in their identity-driven, boutique-style promises not meant to make the lives of New Brunswickers better, but to simply get elected. Voici une liste des promesses faites par ce gouvernement.
Here is a list of promises made by this government that it has failed to keep. This list also includes decisions made by this government that have had negative repercussions on New Brunswickers.
Balanced budgets each and every year of their mandate. The very first promise broken by the Holt government was a financial promise. La promesse d'équilibrer le budget.
The promise to balance the budget. First, the Premier revised her promise, stating that the budget would not be balanced in the first year. Then she revised her promise again, saying that if her government came close to balancing the budget, that it would be just as good. Then came the budget and the revelation that the whole government had no intention of balancing the budget during its term, and to counter that argument, its first deficit had to be at least $600 million. Not only they failed to deliver on their promise to balance the books every year, but the Premier and her government now plan to add at least $3 billion to the provincial debt. Broken promise.
New Brunswick, that on the floor of this House, the Finance Minister said that the loss of over $60 million to our revenues due to the HST holiday the Trudeau government imposed as an effort to stop their government from sinking was non-negotiable. Now, the Finance Minister is saying that those dollars are indeed negotiable. Once again, the taxpayers of this province are left holding the bag for the failures of this government to keep their word, this time on holding their federal cousins to account. The promise to immediately remove the cost of carbon adjuster? Promise broken. Remember when the now Premier and then the Leader of the Opposition called the cost of carbon adjuster the Higgs tax,
Right.
and claimed he could remove it with the stroke of a pen anytime he wanted. Remember when the now Premier called the Premier of the former government a hypocrite, right here on the floor of this House, Madam Speaker. She spent days in this House repeating the same thing over and over again. If what she claimed was true, and that this could have been corrected with the stroke of a pen at any time the former Premier wanted, then why has this Premier failed to do so now?
Right. Not so easy.
She told New Brunswickers during the election that she would scrap this immediately, and she has deliberately failed New Brunswickers. In the year she has not removed this tax as she promised, the tax has almost doubled. Who does this impact? Every single New Brunswicker. Where is the promised affordability? When they were the official opposition, they were informed of the reasons why the cost of carbon adjuster had to be set the way it was. They knew why this had to be done in the manner that it was. Knowing that, they still made the reckless promise to remove the cost of carbon adjuster, and they promised to do it immediately. And so that begs the question, because she failed to remove it immediately with the stroke of a pen, as she characterized it, and she was so willing to tie it to the former government, it's been a year, is the cost of carbon adjuster now to be called the Holt tax?
There you go.
Or is she simply to be called a hypocrite, as she called the former Premier on the floor of this House? La promesse de créer un nouveau bureau.
The promise to create a new office for a mental health advocate in their first year? Promise broken. New Brunswickers with mental health issues were promised a mental health advocate, which was just one of 7 points promised by this government. While she was leader of the official opposition, the Premier said she would lead a government with heart. Does letting down the most vulnerable among us fit the Premier's definition of a government with heart? The former candidate for this Liberal government criticized the Premier for her failure.
Community/collaborative healthcare clinics. You know, the ones the Premier said would be open in the first year of her government, only to be slickly rewarded to 2025 to give herself a few extra months. The only ones opened up are the ones the former government set up. In other words, they were already open. By April, this was so clear that the CBC did a story with the headline, "How Premier Holt Counts New Collaborative Care Clinics." That was the headline. Time is ticking. Last year's throne speech specifically mentioned Fredericton, Moncton, St. John, Edmonton, Campbellton, Carleton North, the Acadian Peninsula, St. Stephen, Sussex, and Sackville. Where are the 10 new community/collaborative healthcare clinics promised? Now, Madam Speaker, I have to just go into that word new. New is an absolute word, and I think that it would be reasonable to assume that any New Brunswicker who hears new collaborative care clinics, they're thinking bricks and mortar, they're thinking new people coming in, they're thinking new because that's what new incites or it causes in your mind to come out, new. But once they form government, they very quickly change the terms of the engagement to something very different. And so that's where I want to talk a little bit about this next, Madam Speaker, is the change that has happened because now they have to deliver. And we are going to see what they have actually delivered versus what they're putting out in their throne speech. The truth is, the Premier has spent months announcing every new team member addition to existing clinics. There has not been one new clinic opened. Her announcements have heralded family health teams. In fact, the last time the Premier mentioned new community health care clinics might have been right after the last throne speech.
Rerun.
Let's turn to the assertion that in the throne speech that, and I quote, "These teams are taking more than 10,000 patients off the waiting list for care in communities across New Brunswick." 10,000 people? Sounds suspiciously like the 10,000 jobs pledge the Premier made when she was the head of the Jobs Board. That was such a colossal failure that I had to check the numbers from the Holt government's own press releases to see what they said. Here are the real numbers. And again, Madam Speaker, from the government's own press releases. Campbellton, 2,700 taken on with a goal of an additional 1,500 to 2,000 more. So there's 2,700 with an aspirational goal of a couple thousand more. So the real number, 2,700. Moncton, statement released said that the number of people the team is expected to serve is about 700 patients within the next year. Not now, next year. And we've seen this next year theme express itself throughout this government in the last year.
Take it down.
Miramichi, within 2 years, not now, not today, not immediately, it will serve 1,000 patients. This is in addition to the 3,000 patients already in the care of those doctors. So this is 3,000 patients who are already taken care of, in other words, not attributable to anything done by this government. Carlton North, it is expected the team will serve an additional 800 patients. Note the emphasis on additional. That means it was already in place. Without a primary care provider by the end of 2026. Not in 2025, but those people will come off the rolls in 2026. Tantramar, the clinic was established in 2023, so already open, but counted as one of the 10, I use the word new.
Right.
It currently serves 1,650 patients and is expected to take another 1,000 patients by the end of 2025. So the 1,650 who were already being served do not constitute part of the 10,000 the government claims are being taken off the list thanks to the new, red, already in operation, clinic.
Right. Right.
Lamec, no numbers mentioned. Who is being taken off the list in the Lamec region? Are they part of the 10,000 names being removed? Fredericton, this one was an expansion, not a new clinic, which is expected to take on another 1,600 patients with no timeline given. 2025, 2026, no one, including this government, knows. So you have to take away all of the current people from the government's 10,000 patient claim, because if the clinic was already in operation, these people already had access and are therefore not part of the 10,000 patients that are being taken off according to the government.
There you go.
Looking at the aspirational numbers, well, that adds up to 7,100 people, far short of the 10,000 patient number the government is trying to sell to people. It's a let's have fun with numbers day for the Holt government, except that we are talking about setting expectations for people to get access to health care, and that is a shameful thing. Le discours.
Last year's speech from the throne mentioned, and I quote, $10,000 payments will be made to all nurse practitioners, registered nurses, and licensed practical nurses working in public hospitals and long-term care facilities. Really? Did all these nurses receive these payments? No. The promise was not kept. The problem with the Liberals and their promises is that you always have to look at the details. They said they would respect workers. Ask the several thousand nurses who did not receive their bonuses if they feel respected. Did you tell public health nurses that you were going to take their jobs away? No. Do you think they feel valued and respected? The nurses filed a complaint for bargaining in bad faith on August 12th. Is that because the whole government respected them, as it promised? This government cut Horizon's budget by $50 million. Is that taking care of the people who take care of you? Does this $50 million cut improve staffing issues in the health sector? Did the government really collaborate with our valued pharmacists when it cancelled the pharmacy clinic pilot project? No. That's not valuing people. That's not collaborating. And the people of this province are suffering as a result. The lung cancer screening program will not be implemented this year as planned. What happened? Another example of broken promises. Another failure, another broken promise.
Lunch program. Scheduled to be delivered when? September 2025, the beginning of this school year. Is it in place? No. Promise broken, Madam Speaker. Let's look at the chaos and crisis created in our school system. Believe you me, there are questions that this government and all Liberal MLAs will have to answer when it comes to the damage they have done and continue to do. Firing librarians. Oh, and lest we forget, the Holt government was found guilty of bad faith by the Labour Board, so much for respecting workers, lowering expectations, cutting budgets, and then telling districts, oops, you didn't know that was negotiable? Using their own words in their Liberal election platform, they said that New Brunswick students are 1.5 years behind the average Canadian student in math, science, and literacy. Do they really believe they will help our students catch up by lowering standards, reducing time on task, taking away mental health supports, ISD team funding cut, and adding more PD days without evidence? A fact we learned after the Premier and Education Minister claimed they did have evidence. This government is now touting the possibility of taking away grade levels. They claim that they would base their decisions on evidence. Where is the evidence for taking away grade levels? Where is the evidence for anything they have done to our education system thus far?
They know best.
The Child and Youth Advocate had to take this government behind the shed to get them to change course on their education reforms. Evidence? I think not. Who loses? Our children. And they're having little conversations, Madam Speaker, and they're having a little laugh at this. It's our kids that are losing because of their decisions, and it's shameful. On my team.
When it comes to social development and our seniors, what we have seen so far is the exact opposite of a government with a heart. The Ombudsman for Children, Youth and Seniors had to intervene and demand accountability for the $47 million in cuts to the child welfare budget. There have been cuts to food banks. They broke their promise for comfort allowance for people in nursing homes. They cut CHIMO funding for the mental health helpline. We saw a crisis develop with seniors wanting or waiting for a place in a nursing home. We can't blame the current government alone for this. We all know that. But it was in charge when we reached the worst levels ever recorded. and its decisions did not improve the situation. Who are the losers with the Holt government in power? Our seniors and their families. Economically, the Holt government said it would address labor needs by taking a balanced approach, helping employers meet their needs in the labor market while ensuring that New Brunswickers work for good wages. The reality is quite different. It has committed to focusing on certain sectors: healthcare, education, and construction. Okay, I understand. But where was the promised balanced approach for workers in other sectors? What about the disruption this government has caused in the restaurant and food service industries, as well as other sectors with its inflexible policies? There are immigrant families who work hard in their host communities, who were striving to obtain permanent citizenship, who pay taxes here and who are now forced to leave because of this government's intransigence. These were future New Brunswickers, people who were striving to integrate here, whom the Premier and her government have rejected.
Relief plan for businesses.
Oh, dear.
It has a $50 million budget, which has been almost completely unused. Another failure. They took American liquor off the shelves, but now have started selling it at a loss, and started selling it in secrecy. This looks like a government with the worst transparency in the history of New Brunswick, despite the Premier promising the opposite. This government was asked if the new rules on importing liquor would impact the Liquor Corp's bottom line. The answer was no, but once the facts were revealed, the government's response was effectively nothing to see here. So much for radical transparency. No new contracts with American companies was the edict from the Holt government, but yet they are doing one with Missouri-based Pro-Energy/Riggs Energy Atlantic down in Tantramar to the tune of $1 billion, spread over 25 years plus, buying electricity from them at a secret rate. I repeat, secret rate. But while they're doing that, they canceled the contract with an American firm and forced Elections New Brunswick to continue with their patchwork operation. Say one thing, do another. Same old Liberals. And there it is, Madam Speaker. We all sat quietly and respectfully during their throne speech. And we have the government House Leader yapping across the way because he doesn't want to respect the opinions of others, Madam Speaker. But it's okay, because I talk about that later on in this very speech. What value did New Brunswickers get for the $27,000 a month contract with a U.S. lobbying firm and all the taxpayer funding jetting down to Washington for the Premier? Did the Holt government come back with any deals to carve out exemptions for New Brunswick? No. On the nation-building projects front, the Holt government completely missed the boat. Yes, there were taxpayer-funded trips to Ottawa with ministers in tow to get New Brunswick on the map for nation-building projects. By the way, the Premier pitched projects that were already excluded from PM Carney's list of short and long-term projects. While there, the Premier spoke at the Canada 2020 Annual Policy Summit and held a big kitchen party at the expense of the taxpayers of this province. You should know that Canada 2020 is billed as Canada's leading progressive think tank. Founded by 3 former Liberal staffers, including Tom Pitfield, who was the Executive National Campaign Director and Chief Strategist for Mark Carney 2025. If it walks like a Liberal love-in and quacks like a Liberal love-in, and all paid for by New Brunswick taxpayers. Did anyone in New Brunswick benefit? No. This government came back empty-handed. So far, the score is 0 for HST holiday money, 0 for nation-building projects, and 0 for a pharmacare program. So much for being able to work with the feds. New Brunswick loses again.
Homelessness, housing, and mental health and addiction. This government has failed. We have a government that has been in power for a year and has used this situation to make announcements rather than take concrete actions. They should already know what the problems are. We have city mayors asking for help in dealing with the social crisis. Instead of taking action, the minister responsible, who already had the power to act, chose to make a public appeal to the Prime Minister for help, thereby abdicating their responsibility as the minister responsible, and only after the outcry sparked by the mayor of St. John. Once again, an announcement was made to give the impression that they were taking action. Then came the creation of a special task force, supposedly to find solutions to a problem that this government should have already answered. Why? Because they said they had won when they were elected. Instead, we have a minister responsible who prefers to blame cities and challenge the direction they are taking rather than working with them to solve the problem. He even went so far as to try to oppose the creation of red zones in St. John, even though he was the chair of the committee that made those recommendations. Crime and fear are on the rise across the province, particularly in our cities. Affected business people are contacting the government daily for answers. Businesses in Fredericton say they are exhausted by the suffering and side break-ins and public drug use. And this report comes from the Premier's writing. Crime is up 8% in St. John. Their businesses are being vandalized. They are losing customers. They are fed up and looking to leave their locations to find places where they can do business without being targeted by crime. Who are the losers? Literally everyone. The homeless, who may or may not have mental health and substance abuse issues, our businesses and those who patronize them, our police services who have to try to manage this problem as best they can, and our citizens who no longer feel safe.
Official opposition is to bring forward motions this legislative session that seek to address areas where we think government can improve upon the approaches currently being taken in the areas of mental health and drug addiction, giving people the tools and the hope they need to start rebuilding their lives and becoming part of an even better New Brunswick because of it. Our cities must live with the reality that as their costs increase, they will have to make do with less. This government promised reform, and instead of working with municipalities, they dropped on them a property tax assessment freeze that will make it even harder for cash-strapped municipalities to deliver the services that they are responsible for. Cities have infrastructure to pay for, services to deliver, payroll to pay for those services, contracts to negotiate, and now they will have to do that with less. I understand that this freeze will help stabilize property taxes for homeowners, but what it does instead is force municipalities to raise their rates to compensate for the lost revenue. I quote the executive director of the UMNB. We had hoped to work in partnership with the government to target that affordability to people who need it the most. There wasn't a consultation process on this, And it's really just a move that puts pressure on our folks who have the least amount of ability and the least amount of new revenue sources to offset that work, he said. Freezing property taxes was not listed in the Liberal platform. It was dropped on municipalities without prior knowledge or conversation. So much for working with stakeholders. It will not deliver on any affordability for homeowners if municipalities are forced to raise their rates. New Brunswickers cannot forget that the funding sources for the programs that this government announced are not known. It is suspected that they will come from general revenues. Those general revenues come from taxpayers. So is this Liberal financial sleight of hand really going to benefit anyone? Who loses? Municipalities that must struggle even more to deliver services with less, and that means the people who live in those communities will also lose.
Yes, of course. No question.
This government promised radical transparency. They said New Brunswickers would have a government that is open and transparent with what they're doing with people's money. Instead, what we have is a government that blacks out RTI requests to the point where they are completely useless. If you ever want to see them, we have them. We've done many. They're all blacked out. You can take a look at them. I believe that there is a point to be made that there is more information publicly available from the Trump government than can be obtained through an RTI request from the Holt government.
I've already mentioned several instances where this government has failed to be radically transparent, as it promised. I will not repeat those examples here, but it is important for New Brunswickers to know that a government that promised to be open and transparent is doing exactly the opposite of what it promised. There are a multitude of other areas where this government has failed or broken its promises. I could go on to list in detail the many bad decisions made by this government, but I will limit myself to a few examples for the sake of brevity. It has cut the budget for road work, cancelled the construction of the sidewalk on the Miramichi Centennial Bridge, and plans to demolish the old Anderson Bridge. In the area of tourism, it has cut $905,000 from the advertising budget of the Tourism Association. It reduced the funding for Minister's Island. It reduced funding for McDonald Farm. Its handling of energy issues in New Brunswick has left the new province's residents frustrated and perplexed.
Point about this government. This is a government that refuses to accept responsibility. They are good at making announcements, but when it comes to being held to account in the media for the decisions they have made, it is a sad and common refrain that the media reports that a minister was not made available for an interview or that they simply sent a statement. Now, Madam Speaker, I wrote this a week ago, and the Premier did make sure that she trotted out 3 ministers to the rotunda yesterday, so I think that the conversation we had in here might have changed things a little bit.
That's what we're here for.
We have seen a lack of responsibility when it came to admitting who took away public health nurses' jobs, who is responsible for struggles with NB Power, blaming district education councils when it came to budget cuts that this government itself imposed. There are always going to be challenges and issues that come with governing, but what we need is a government that can rise to that occasion, and we simply do not have it in this government. I was asked what mark I would give the Holt government for their first year. I replied F for failure. Le discours du trône de cette année est en grande partie.
This year's State of the Union address is for the most part a repeat of last year's State of the Union address. It is an exercise in manipulation and word salad. Please compare last year's speech with this year's. You will find that many of the references are identical. It is a reaffirmation of the measures that the government promised to take in its first year but failed to implement. It has managed to add 7 pages to the speech from the throne, while saying less. Please note the number of measures that are expected to be implemented in 2026. I've highlighted just some of the things this government has failed to do over the past year. It has delayed lung cancer screening by 1 year, the appointment of a mental health advocate by 1 year, the school lunch program by 1 year, the elimination of the gas tax by 1 year, and it has postponed balancing the budget indefinitely. A pattern has clearly emerged. On that basis alone, I doubt what it will actually accomplish in 2026.
I've noticed that I've spent this time highlighting the failures and deficiencies of this government. The role of the official opposition, as I mentioned earlier in this speech, is to hold government to account when it is not delivering for its citizens. It is to hold the government to account for its failure to achieve its own stated goals. What I have stated today are facts. There are things that the government has accomplished and has delivered on as it promised to do. Our job as the official opposition is not to be the herald for government. They can highlight their own successes and have no need for the official opposition to do so. A former colleague of mine, and I agree with him, said there's a reason it is not called His Majesty's Loyal Cooperation. It is not our sworn duty to help the government explain and excuse their many failures to New Brunswickers. The laws of physics teach us that without friction, you cannot have any traction. The Westminster parliamentary system assigns the duty of friction to the opposition. The majority of New Brunswickers, I believe, would agree that in their first year, this government hasn't gotten much traction. It is our duty to provide more friction, not less. When this government postpones, delays, cancels, and breaks promises, for us to help them excuse and explain their actions to New Brunswickers would be a dreadful failure in our sworn duties to those very people. It is true that when government fails, people suffer. It is also true that when government succeeds, people prosper. It is important to remember that when we oppose something, it does not necessarily mean that we are opposed to the idea. It may simply be that we disagree on how to do it, or we have doubts that this government can accomplish it as promised, which they have done a very good job of demonstrating. Everyone believes in better health care. Everyone believes in a better education system. Everyone believes in helping those in need, no matter what their circumstances are. But in order for us to be an effective opposition, we must make the government feel pressure by standing up for those citizens for who the government has made decisions that affect them negatively, or when government fails to do what they said they were going to do.
If members of the government listening to my speech are angry with me because of my remarks, they need only ask themselves whether what I have presented is true, and they will find that it is. Being angry with me because I have a different opinion from theirs shows that they have completely missed the point of my speech. What I am saying is that as a government, you promised certain things and you must deliver on them. If you do not, that is your responsibility, not ours. David Adams Richards prend sa retraite du Sénat et les éloges suivants lui ont été attribués, et je pense qu'ils sont mérités, de la part de sénateur Leo Housakos.
Expression on resisting ideological conformity, and on the dangers of silencing opposition views have left their mark not only on this chamber, but on Canadians far beyond it. Senator Judy White said Richards used his voice to highlight why we are all here, reminding us of the real impacts of our decisions on Canadians, especially those he represents, both New Brunswickers and rural Canadians. Senator Denise Batters added that Richards recognized that no one has the monopoly on the truth. These are statements that should resonate with all members of this chamber, Madam Speaker. Should the Premier, when she closes the debate, or her members in their debates or in member statements, choose to vilify me for having a different opinion or for stating facts that they are not comfortable hearing, then they are part of what is wrong with our system. It means that they have focused on the politics of things rather than their true purpose, which is to deliver for New Brunswickers. Will they look to assign blame, deflect, look in the rearview mirror? Or will they take responsibility, apologize to New Brunswickers, and do better? That is the purpose of my speech today, to do my job, to highlight deficiencies, to hold the government to account for their promises, to state facts on where they have failed, to put pressure on them to do better, to make better decisions for the right reasons, not the political ones, to recognize that taking responsibility for your performance to this point is not a weakness, that photo ops, fancy ad campaigns, and government-approved opinions do not constitute the truth, that those things reveal a disconnect from what real, everyday New Brunswickers are experiencing. When government does better, people win, and that is what we, as the official opposition, want for the people of New Brunswick. Thank you, Madam Speaker.